Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Rima. I am a director at Zen EB-5. We are very, very grateful to have you all here this evening, and especially to have our friends from KLDP, Nirul Patel and Hallie Schechter. And of course, as always, my colleague Bhuplesh Gupta, who is the vice president and principal of Zen EB-5. We actually would love to answer your questions as well. So please feel free to start, putting those in the chat. And I'll, start looking at those. But I guess, Bhuplesh, do you want to start and introduce Nirul?
Yeah. So, uh, so I'm Bhuplesh Gupta. I'm the vice president at Zen EB-5. As she mentioned, I'm the principal on all the EB-5 projects Zen offers. So we have three HA projects right now in Phoenix area. Recently, we got our regional center approved. So we are very excited about it. That opens up a lot more opportunity for us to grow in this area. And we are looking to do at least two more projects before September. But we'll keep on doing more and more projects. That's our main business. We are real estate developers by trade. But today we are here to talk about what's going on in the EB-5 industry. We are not going to talk in detail about the projects. So if you're interested, we'll send you a link about our upcoming project webinar. But today we have Neeral and Holly about they're going to talk about their experience with what's going on and how EB-5 is shaping up as we are approaching September deadline, and how things will be after September, what you should be doing right now, and stuff like that. So, without any delay, I would like to start based on a couple of questions we have gathered. Um, Basically, after talking to investors, there are some common questions that we have prepared, but other than that, this is going to be an open discussion. So, Neeral, one question which has come up in almost every discussion we have these days with investors is the recent progress in the EB2 and EB3 categories. So if you look at the visa bulletin for last 2 or 3 months, every month there is some progress. And that is giving a hope to people who are in EB2 and EB3 categories that somehow they will be covered and they don't need EB-5, and they are just putting their EB-5 on hold. Um, which may be okay, but sometimes I tell them that's like a gamble. Like, what if all of a sudden there is a retrogression? Now you're putting yourself a couple of months behind. So, what's your advice, and what would you recommend for these guys? Like, at least what should they do to prepare in case there is a retrogression in EB2 and EB3 from what it is right now?
Yeah, so first of all, obviously, thank you, Bhuplesh and Rima, for having both Hallie and I join here today. It's always great doing these webinars with you guys. I think what this massive jump in the EB2 category showed us, and I think it went to the priority moved to January 2015 or something.
Yeah.
It just, and it took everyone by surprise. First of all, no one expected it to jump that far ahead and that far ahead so quickly, as in so recently. And that just goes to show how unpredictable the visa bulletin really is. You know, it's one thing to have a cutoff date. It's another thing entirely on how quickly or slowly those priority dates move on a month-to-month basis. Before it moved to January 2015, it was moving much, much slowly, much, much slower, right? And it was becoming, not practical for anyone to move forward. Now, of course, anyone who has that January 2015 prior date or earlier, they've become current, so they're excited. I think, we've got questions from clients who have spring, summer, or even, fall of 2015 prior dates, and they're asking us, well, do you think I should do EB-5? My EB-2 prior date is going to become current. I'm like, it's really your call. Like I said, you don't know, you have to keep an eye on the visa bulletin on a month-to-month basis, and everyone finds out at the exact same time. No one has any sort of inside knowledge into how quickly or slowly these priority dates move. So what I've actually been telling my clients is, look, if you have the financial means to do EB-5, and EB-5 is current today, which means you can lock in that APEAD and you can lock it in at $800,000 because you know in the future that amount's going to go up, then start getting your EB-5 petition prepared and just keep an eye on the visa bulletin each month, right? Right now, we know that April is current. In the second week of April, we'll come to know what the May visa bulletin looks like. See how far your EB-2 priority date has jumped forward then. If it's not moved at all and EB-5 is current, then you may want to, focus more on the EB-5. If you see that EB-5 is going to retrogress, then that probably tells you that you may want to get your EB-5 petition in and not worry about EB-2. So you can almost use it as a hedging tool, but you do just need to start planning around that right now.
Yeah, that sounds good. So, in fact, recently I met an investor who has a priority date, I think late 2020,
December 2015.
December, right?
Yeah, December 2015.
And he was in that situation, whether should I do it or not. Means I told him that's your call, but if you could, then I would recommend at least start your source of fund, because that's a time consuming thing. That's a step which takes most of the time. And if
Right.
you're ready,
Yeah, and that takes the most amount of time, and you also have to keep your September deadline in mind.
yeah, yeah.
Keep in mind that the grandfathering provision for EB-5 ends September 30th of this year, so you have to apply before September 30th if you want to be protected from any future changes. So someone with a December 2015 priority date, let's say there's no movement in EB-2 when you get to the summer, then you've got a decision to make. Do I continue waiting, or do I at least get in my EB-5 petition, lock in my APEAD? If I have a child that might be aging out, do I at least lock in that child's age and get this all in at $800,000? And then whatever happens to EB-2 happens later. Don't forget, you can have an EB-2 and EB-5 going at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you file your EB-5 concurrent application this summer, or even in the next couple of months. And then if after that your EB-2 priority date becomes current, you can still file another 485 under the EB-2. And then whichever green card comes in first, you would withdraw from the other program. Now, of course, your funds are still locked into the EB-5 program, but assuming you've gone into a quality project that has all the capital protection and green card protection mechanisms in place, then you're still going to get your funds back. It's just a matter of, again, now you've just hedged, and you're giving yourself the best opportunity.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And that's a great advice. At least start the process so that you don't lose the time. Yep.
I
And
have a question that keeps on coming up, and I think that it was part of our topics, from Sachin Verma. Hi there. Could you please explain the deadline that everyone keeps talking about, September 2026, when the actual program expires in September of 2027? And that is kind of confusing for a lot of people, right?
yeah.
So his question is, what exactly is going to come? Like, what are we expecting for October 1st, 2026?
So this all comes down to supposed drafting error. The EB-5 program technically ends September 30th, 2027. After that, we get whatever the next program is. The grandfathering provision, which says that you're protected from any future changes to the EB-5 program, that had a September 30, 2026 deadline. It's really just a drafting error, but it's not one that's being changed right now. It may get changed as we get closer to September, but today, that's the deadline. Basically, it means that as long as you apply before September 30th, 2026, then you're protected from any future changes to the program. So if the investment amount goes up, or if the program closes completely, or there are no visas available, then as long as you filed before September 30th, 2026, then you still get to partake in the program. That's basically what that means. Now, of course, as we get closer to September, can the grandfathering provision get extended? Potentially, but as of today, that's the deadline.
And then just what change, like, basically what changes could happen post-September is another question.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest changes that will happen post-September is that the investment amount is going to go up. And I think the number that's being floated out there right now is, 937,000. I think that's the number that keeps up with inflation.
Yeah.
And everyone just has to look at the RIA, the Reform and Integrity Act that was signed in 2022, where it says that the investment amount is due to go up every 5 years. So that 2027 puts us right there. Of course, sometime in 2027, when this program is reauthorized, we'll see changes to the program. Who knows, what processing times might look like. We're on the leadership committees at IUSA. We're also in the legislative public policy committees where we're sort of brainstorming ideas of what we want in the next program. So we're looking at today's program. We're seeing what can be improved, and the things we'd like to see implemented in the next program. I would say, better processing times, some more predictability to the visa,
Yeah.
to the reserve categories, potentially new reserve categories. So things like that are, I think, some of the change we might see.
Yeah, that reminds me, like even the senator of Arizona pushed a bill.
Right,
Ruben Gaggo pushed a bill for a dedicated category only for housing.
right.
So we'll see how that pans out. Yeah.
I think someone is asking if we could just do like a breakdown of just EB-5, how it works step by step, if that's okay. I think we have some people who are very new to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this program is it's two right as the program is today, if you're inside the US and you're able to take advantage of concurrent filing, it's broken up into two major stages and there are multiple milestones throughout. The first stage is arguably where 90% of the work is done. That's where you file your EB-5 petition concurrently with your adjustment of status. Your EB-5 petition represents which EB-5 project you've gone into, and what accompanies that is a source of funds report where we trace, track, and document the $800,000 that you've invested into the project. The funds must be invested before we submit the petition. Once that is prepared, and we also have prepared your adjustment of status application, that includes your advance parole, your employment authorization card, and your conditional green card applications. Those are three applications in one. This is all filed together, and we call that the EB-5 and adjustment of status concurrent petition. Once this all goes in, then it's just a waiting game for multiple things to happen. Within a few weeks, you'll get a biometrics appointment notice where you go in and give your fingerprints. Within, I would say right now, 6 to 8 months, you will get your advanced parole and your EAD cards, the travel and work authorization. And obviously, depending on how, future retrogression or backlogs look like, right now, you can expect to get your conditional green card within 2 years or so. That conditional green card will be valid for 24 months. And then at the end of the 24 months, 90 days before it expires, that's when you apply for your permanent 10-year green card. So that's the program or, the process in a nutshell.
Thank you.
So Neeraj, coming on to that point of source of funds, right, where you prepare the entire documentation of the source of funds. So this is a very interesting discussion I have with investors, especially with people like who are already in US, who are earning in US. And often the question is like, my source of fund is very straightforward. It's going to come from my savings or my RSUs. Why the hell it takes 2-3 months to do source of funds, and what complications do you expect to come? So maybe you can chime in some between, like what's actually going on. I mean, I tell them you think it's very straightforward. It is not.
Yeah, I think, and Hallie, I think it's a good idea for you to jump in to sort of give an overview of what the source of funds process looks like, and what are some of the more common sources that people use, and then I can jump into some of the complications that we see.
Yeah, depending on where you're at in the process, some people have a, definitive source of funds established. They know, exactly what sources they're using and how much is coming from each source. Sometimes it's also a conversation with, your counsel to, figure out which sources make the most sense, or which may be the cleanest based on, documentation that's available. Um, but common source of funds that people use, obviously W-2 income, RSUs, people use, secured and unsecured loans. So secured loans, they may take like a home equity line of credit. Unsecured loans, they may use, like personal loans. So, some things that we look out for, and Bhupesh, you were saying, W-2 income, it's super clean. Some things that people don't think about is, the movement of money between in and out of their accounts that they receive, their salary into. So if your salary account is receiving just your salary and then you're moving into a savings account, it's really clean that way. That's great. But oftentimes, people move money between other accounts or have, Zelle transfers between friends and family. And USCIS wants us to source all of those. So third party transactions are something we look out for as well.
And just to give the the audience an idea of what's changed, as immigration practitioners, we live in what we call a live situation. So we have to react to however the government is reacting on a daily basis. A year ago, and even previously before that, we were able to do source of funds in, a week, 2 weeks. We could provide sample bank statements, we could provide sample pay stubs, a couple of years of tax returns, file a petition, and say we're going to give the rest of the documents later, not a problem. Those cases were getting approved. In October and November 2025, there was this massive adjudication switch over at USCIS. And the only way, and this is for all immigration, the only way the government can ever ask an applicant any question or notify you of any real policy change is through an RFE. We started to see RFEs in October, November this year, where that's where we realized that, okay, USCIS has new requirements. They're not going to tell us what these new requirements are. We're going to have to figure it out through RFEs, through some of these notice of intent to deny, and even some of these denials. And what we've come to learn is that now, before where we could provide sample bank statements, now USCIS wants every single bank statement. So for example, if you say that my source of funds is easy, $800,000 is coming from W-2 income, I'm sorted. That means you need to show every single bank statement from now going back to time for every single month showing the accumulation of $800,000 from W-2 income. So that means your bank statements need to be highlighted with your monthly or biweekly salary deposits totaling up to $800,000. And like Hallie said, now what the government's really picking at is third-party transactions. So if it took you, let's say, 4 years to get that $800,000, but within those 4 years, you've received gifts from friends and family from India, for example. You bought a house and you had a down payment deposit gift from your father in India. You've had sell transactions with friends from within the US. Now the government is picking at those transactions. So they want to know what the source of those transactions are. There's of course been some great lawsuits filed against USCIS where they've lost, which basically says that you don't need to go back and trace every single dollar. That's fine, but in practicality, what we're seeing is that the government still wants these. So anyone who is doing EB-5 and you're considering doing EB-5 and you're wondering, what do I need to do to get my accounts in order, to have a quote unquote clean source of funds is, really take a look at your bank accounts. If you are using W-2 income, start highlighting some of those third-party transactions. Keep in mind that if you're going to use a home equity line of credit, you the home equity line of credit agreement and showing the loan proceeds come in is one thing, but you also have to show how you acquired your home in the first place. So you have to trace the down payment. If you've had a mortgage on that home, then you have to source the each and every mortgage payment as well. Now, of course, if documents date back to, I bought this home 10, 15 years ago, even the government understands that the US financial systems don't keep records for more than 7 years. So we do have secondary evidence that we can use, like declarations and affidavits and things like that. But you do need to discuss with your attorney, and give them the entire picture of what your source of funds looks like.
Great.
So I have a question. I think all three of you can chime in on this one. I'd like to get EB-5 for my parents who live in India, and I have about 70% of the funds. How is there any difference when, when her parents are in India? Like, how does she approach that? And is it possible for her to fund the remaining money? That's the question. But I think what she means is by loan or by installment. I'm not quite sure what she means by the second part. Can I fund the remaining money?
I
I
think
think it's
that question,
can I gift the remaining money? So
Okay,
yes.
if it's done through parents, and let's say parents are providing 70%,
got it.
it's can I gift the
Got it, got it, got it.
30%? Hallie, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, gifts are perfectly fine. The source of funds requirements for a gift or an investor's direct funds are basically the same. The really only additional item is a gift agreement. So if the donor, depending on where their funds are coming from, the level of documentation is going to be relatively the same as if it was the investor's direct funds, and there'll be a gift agreement there. So one thing to keep in mind if you are thinking of either giving a gift or accepting a gift, that USCIS is going to require 7 years of tax returns from that donor. So, that's something that may hinder someone in proceeding with a gift, from someone if that individual doesn't want to, release their tax returns.
And then
Okay.
Hallie, and then just the
So
difference if her parents are in India, is
Mhm.
there any difference in filing if they're not in the country?
Yeah, so there's a minor difference. So instead of doing a concurrent filing like Neural mentioned at the beginning, the parents would do an I-526E only, so only the EB-5 petition with the source of funds. And then once that is approved, they would go through visa processing at the consulate.
okay, yeah. So I think one question comes up again that reminds me of a question I have pretty frequently with investors is, if somebody gifts me or loan the money, we understand that we need to do a source of fund of the of the loaner, but is it like, do they need to disclose everything, or just like how they're able to fund the gap? Let's say somebody is taking a gift of 200K from a friend or a family. Do you need to source their entire income or just that 200K?
Yeah, so we never want to source, at anyone's complete net worth, whether it's the applicant or whether you're the donor, which is a person given the gift. We just focus on the 200K or the amount that's being gifted. However, for some reason, USCIS has this weird rule where let's say, even if you were to just give $50,000 and you made that in the last 6 months, they still want to see 7 years of tax returns from that person. So whoever is gifting you funds or loaning you funds, and we see this issue come up, make sure that it's a friend or family member that's going to be okay disclosing their financial documents, whether it's initially to whatever your attorney requests, or even later, should there be an RFE, you want to make sure that they are going to comply and provide with whatever's being requested.
And
Okay.
then just a little follow-up about the India question. Um, are there any more risks or constraints when people are applying from India rather than in the States?
I mean, the only risks and constraints you really need to worry about, or just take into consideration, is just making sure that you're in compliance with the Indian financial rules and regulations. Namely the RBI and FEMA. So as long as you're in compliance with them, you're good to go.
And then obviously, if just his follow-up question, and it would still be one filing for both the parents.
Exactly. Just,
Yeah.
in EB-5, it's one investment covers, spouses and any children under the age of 21.
Thank you. Should I go? Another question. So, I previously had a $500,000 HELOC. I transferred funds from the HELOC to my bank and brokerage accounts for stock trading. and later repaid the funds back into the HELOC. As a result, there are many transactions in the history of the account. Now I'm taking out a new $750,000 loan. Could you advise on the best approach I should follow once I receive the new loan funds?
I mean, I think the first thing you do is make an appointment with an attorney. I think there's a lot to that question that you really need to consult and have a proper consultation, whether it's us or anyone else. But definitely do that. But generally speaking, you'll you'll need to document all those transactions. So obviously, you document how you initially acquired that home, any sort of mortgage payments. You would document the first HELOC and the repayment of that HELOC, and then you document the second HELOC. And we've had that, right? We've had cases where, on a single property, this has happened two, three times over, like this cycle of taking a HELOC and repaying it, and taking a HELOC and repaying it. And we've seen RFEs, and you do need to document all of that.
Okay, but please, do you want to talk about maybe the changes that are coming up?
Yeah, I think Neeral briefly touched on those. So
Mhm.
I think the next common question I'm hearing these days is so there is a little bit buzz about the new inventory management model, how it is going to impact the processing of the 526Es. There are a couple of blogs, some attorneys have written those blogs, but I think there's still a lot of confusion among the investors. Okay, what's going to happen actually from yesterday? Like what changed?
So in terms of what's actually changed, we're not going to know. I mean, USCIS is not a flip of a switch. So every time they come up with some announcement to show the general public that, hey, we're USCIS and we're organized, we're not going to really start to see any results of that for probably at least another 8 to 12 months, if not longer. And even this new case management system, it kind of codifies already, what they've already been doing. You know, they're doing this to hopefully prioritize, I think they say rural applications more, which they already seem to be doing anyways. They say that the I-526E processing isn't going to happen until the 956F is approved, which we already knew that your I-526E will not be adjudicated until the 956F is approved. So they're kind of already now just saying that, hey, this is what we're doing, even though they've kind of been doing that already. Not to mention, anytime USCIS comes up with a new idea, you kind of have to take it with a pinch of salt. You don't know if they're really going to follow through with that. I mean, I think the biggest example we can give is that FIFO, first in, first out. Historically, USCIS is supposed to adjudicate cases in the order received. We know that this is not true. Forget about priority processing, just across the board in EB-5 or all immigration, we see, later received petitions be approved before earlier received petitions. So if they can't even get that right, I'm not very confident in this new case management system, but it doesn't really change anything for anyone who's filed recently. I think you continue as you're doing, you continue your doesn't change how you approach source of funds. It doesn't change really how you approach a project. Um, Maybe it changes processing times, but like I said, we're not going to know for a long time.
Yeah, I totally get it. Means we have seen so many irregularities or randomness in the case selection. There have been certain cases which are approved in few months and some are pending for years. I
Yeah.
don't understand.
And maybe that's the point of the case management system, right? Maybe that's the point, is so that we don't have such wildly erratic processing times across the board. But we'll see in reality how it works out. But like I said, to any of my clients who ask me this doesn't change how you approach EB-5. It has nothing to do with how you do your source of funds, because that's going to be the same no matter what. It also shouldn't impact how you approach which project you go into, because you still will need to look at the underlying asset, and that's the most important thing, to make sure that your capital is protected and your green card's protected, because those two things are somewhat in your control that you can do due diligence on. USCIS processing is not something you can really do proper due diligence on.
Yeah. Okay. I think another related question is, which I also get it, like right now there is a little bit of rush to get in line before September 30th, which means there is a lot of petitions going to be filed. And then after September, I don't know, but people are still expecting not many cases will be filed, but the EB-5 is still authorized till September of 2027. Now, let's take a worst case, like the program does not reauthorize, and that's it. Like, but the USCIS is still gonna issue 10,000 more visas next year, which means all the pending cases from this year might get adjudicated next year, and the backlog will be cleared. And also from the unreserved categories, as they are clearing up that, there will be more and more visas available from unreserved categories, which will be available to reserved categories. So what's your opinion? Like, is this invisible backlog, which everybody is talking about, gonna go away next year, or how do you think it will be handled?
I thought this was supposed to be an easy webinar, Bhuplesh.
It
You
EB-5
want me
cannot be easy.
you want me to take out the crystal ball? I think you raised some good points. That people have been saying there's going to be a backlog in EB-5 for a year now. We were supposed to see a backlog last year. Last spring, last summer, we were supposed to see a backlog. We didn't. We were supposed to see a backlog this spring, and we still haven't. Of course, while we all get the visa bulletin at the exact same time, um, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a backlog
Mhm.
in EB-5. Certainly not before September. Whatever happens after September 30th, we'll see what happens. But certainly before September 30th, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a backlog at all. And like you said, if there is no program, which means that there are no future filings, then yes, there's a very good chance that anyone who has filed will never see a backlog, and their case would be approved and adjudicated in a quote unquote timely manner. But we'll see.
Thank you. I'm getting a lot of questions about, is it riskier to get a loan? Like, does the USCIS, and maybe Hallie, maybe you can talk about that. Like, is it riskier? Are they looking at like if it's your own earned money or if it's a loan? Is there any difference in that when the USCIS is looking at it
I
for
mean,
fun?
so yeah, so loans are perfectly acceptable as a source of funds. One thing that we look out for in with loans is we want to make sure there's no restrictions on the use of the loan. So sometimes there'll be, let's say in a personal loan with a traditional bank, there's a restriction on the use of the loan for investment or purchasing securities. That loan would not be able to be used for EB-5. So that's something that we look out for when, if a client says they want to use a loan, we review the loan agreement and, determine if that's a viable source. But loans are perfectly fine. One thing that USCIS may ask for in the future is repayment of the loan. So we would recommend that you keep track of your payments, making sure that your repayment is from a lawful and, traceable source. But loans are perfectly fine.
Thank you.
I think there was a related question, like if I have RSUs, should I sell the RSUs or take a loan against those? Like, what's the recommended path?
I mean, ultimately up to you, right? I mean, but if you take a loan, then you're not gonna have a tax bill on that because it's not a taxable event. So I think maybe look at your financial situation, discuss with your CPA, discuss with your brokerage account holder as well, and come to a decision. Some people are selling RSUs, some people are taking loans against them. It just completely depends. Both are valid.
Mhm.
Like Hallie said, just make sure you send us the loan agreement first so we can make sure that there are no restrictions on the use of the loan proceeds, but otherwise it's good to go.
Yeah, in fact, because I was having the same discussion with one gentleman today morning, he has the same question that he has quite a bit of RSUs from his employer and he's in a dilemma like whether he should sell it or take a loan. And I told him like both are from a USCIS point of view, both are valid options. Now, which way you want to go, that's totally up to you. Like how do you want to deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, how about this? From a USCIS perspective, both are identical.
Yeah.
That there's no difference. It's just depending on how you want to structure your finances.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Okay. Let's see. There are a couple of questions on the approval trends.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not sure. Like if
I mean, I can
yeah,
touch on
yeah,
on approval trends. I think, while we have a lot of issues with USCIS, I will say that under the RIA, they've improved a lot.
mm,
Pre-RIA, we had EB-5 applicants, and sometimes they're waiting 5, 6 years to getting just the I-526Es approved. Now, even in, we understand that there's priority processing and things like that, but even in HUA, you're still seeing I-526Es approved in 12 months, sometimes even 10 months.
yeah,
So you're still seeing really, really good approval times. I will say that, yeah, on the APEAD side, they probably slowed down a little bit. Before we were seeing in 2 months, 4 months, even 6 months. Now it's taking a little bit closer to 8 months. But overall, the processing times for EB-5 are pretty decent.
And so someone is asking, if there is no backlog and the date is current, then why would it take 2 years to get my conditional green card?
That's a question for USCIS. Unfortunately, we're not the gatekeepers here. We're just those middlemen. We're just the
that is
middlemen
so
that prepare
true.
the application. But once it leaves the office, then it's in God's hands. And as far as anyone's concerned in this situation, USCIS is God.
That's correct.
It's also a two-step process. So you have to have your initial EB-5 petition approved first before your adjustment of status or your green card application can be approved. So, one gets approved and then the other, and in total, it could be a 2-year wait time.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting question over here. Does all project jobs needs to be created by the time 829 is applied or by the time it is approved?
Well, I mean, at the 829 stage, and maybe people place you may even want to speak with this, right? Just from the project
Yeah.
perspective.
Well, we can definitely talk from the project point of view that in our case, especially for all our projects, we are creating all the jobs way within their sustainment period limit. Like, for example, in Skyview, we created job by November of last year, which was way ahead of anybody's sustainment period. And similarly, in Desert Sky and Skyview, all the required jobs will be created in next 12 months. So um, for my project point of view, it looks very, very interesting and attractive. Like they don't even have to go to the 829 stage in order to get the jobs. The jobs will be already created probably along with their 526 or 485s are done.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's how we would approach sort of project due diligence as well. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
by law, at the time of 829 filing, the job should be created so that when USCIS picks up your petition, they see that at least 10 jobs were created as per your investment. But, that's why it's important to do proper project due diligence in the very beginning. I think that's one of the most common questions that we get is, hey, what do we look out for in an EB-5 project? I think, green card protection is one thing, but I think capital protection is also another thing, right? And they kind of both, they
Yeah.
complement each other very
Yeah.
well. You need both. And some things we always tell our clients is, make sure you just go into a project that has an experienced developer, someone who's done this type of development before and they've done it successfully. You also want to make sure that these projects are fully financed, so they're not depending on EB-5 money. A fully financed project means that whether you choose to invest today or not, this project will still be completed. And not to mention, it tells you that the job creation numbers will also be met. whether you
That's
choose
true.
to invest or not, so you can go into this project with the comfort of knowing that even if I'm the only investor in this project, that sufficient jobs will not only be created, but this project will be completed as per the business plan, and I'll make sure that I get my 829 approval as well. One important thing that I always tell my clients who ask projects, and maybe Bhuplesh, you can speak to this a bit, is when you're talking about the developer's experience and you're talking about the EB-5 fundraisers experience, ask how they've done during different market conditions. How did they fare in 2008 if they were around during that time? How did they fare during COVID? Recently with the tariffs and things like that, what impact, if any, did that have on the project? A good EB-5 operator and a good developer should be able to answer these questions and give you the kind of comfort you want, knowing that, okay, as we go into the future of uncertainty politically, from a market standpoint, will my project still be around to take care of me?
Yes, and that's a very interesting point. Well, first of all, if the jobs are not being created by 8 to 9 stage, there's definitely something wrong with the project. The project should not take that much time to create a project, and that is where it is very important to do a proper due diligence on the project to make sure that the project is indeed financially independent, which means it does not depend on EB-5. And I can proudly say that none of our Zen EB-5's projects are depending on EB-5. EB-5 is additional source of money which comes in and replaces some of the bank money. But before we take any EB-5, we are almost fully funded with our own money and the bank's money. And that's a very important thing investors needs to understand, that if a bank, an institution trust on a developer by financing up to 80%, that tells a lot of story. Like the bank and institution do trust because they have done their own due diligence, looking at our past track records, our developments, and what we do, and then only they approved up to 80%. So that's important. Another thing is whether this project can be completed without my money, and also given the market conditions, because as you all know, right now there is a little bit of chaos um, because of geopolitical situations. There were tariff situations in last year or so. So does the project have enough cushion in place to handle all of these things? Which means, does the project has enough financial cushion to make sure that these kind of uncertainties do not impact the project significantly and the projects can still progress. Secondly, from time point of view, are we looking at a huge push if things do not happen as per expectations? So it's very important to look at the project very carefully and understand that where the project stands if things go south. Will my money be paid on time? Will the project continue to progress if like tariffs do impact the project, or if it delay due to the labor shortage or things like? What are the risks mitigation steps the developer has taken to to establish that the project will continue and create all the jobs? Also important to understand the job cushion, like how many jobs the project is actually creating versus how many are required. Um, well, everybody throws out a different number, but we as a Zen EB-5 made a gold standard that we need a minimum of 50%. In fact, in all my projects, we have 70 to 80% of job cushion. That's way more than enough required. Like, I don't think so there will be a situation where if we projected that the project will create 500 jobs and it is not even able to create 200, 300, then there's definitely something fundamentally wrong with the project. So it's important to understand all these nitty-gritty details before you invest, and that's where Reem and I spend a lot of time talking to investors, educating about the project, not the process, because that we leave up to the the attorneys. They are experts into that field. Our goal is to educate investors about the projects, like what are the strengths of the projects, what are the risks involved with the project, and then the investors can make informed decision whether they want to proceed with this project or not.
And I have a question that we're getting actually quite a bit lately, Hallie Neural. The attendee is saying that currently he is on H-1B, and with the current market conditions, in case of layoffs and worst case scenario, having to move back to India, what happens then to his EB-5 petition and investment?
Hallie, you want to take that one?
So, yeah, a couple of things. So, if you concurrently file your EB-5 petition, your adjustment of status, once you file the adjustment of status, you are in a period of authorized stay that based on the pending adjustment of status. So if something was to happen with your H-1B job, you would be permitted to remain in the United States while that green card application is pending. Eventually, you'll get your EAD card, you'll have employment authorization, and the AP, you'll have your travel authorization. Nothing would happen to your EB-5 petition, and nothing would happen to your investment if you if you needed to depart the United States, for, let's say, you weren't able to stop working until your EAD came in and you needed to go back to India to, continue employment, then you would withdraw the green card application portion. Your EB-5 petition would continue, and then you would go through the consular processing, the visa processing at the consulate abroad, like we mentioned earlier.
So you're saying that if an investor decide to move to US or move out of US after they file 485 and 526E, they would have to withdraw the 485 and then do a consular processing.
Yeah, if they would need to withdraw the green card application and do consular processing. So you can't have the green card application adjudicated while you're not living in the United States.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, because I had a similar discussion with one gentleman recently, not due to financially, but due to other personal reasons. He wants to go back to India for some time, but he was asking, okay, what should I do? Should I file it over here and then move back, or do it from like once I'm in India, start from there? Like, what's the recommendation?
Well, the good thing is, the EB-5 part of this, which is the Form I-526E, you could be inside the US or outside the US and file that. It makes no difference. It's just if you want to apply for the adjustment of status, which includes the interim benefits of the APEAD, then you must be physically present in the US. If
Mhm.
you're planning on not being physically present in the US, then like Hallie said, you'd apply for the EB-5 petition and then just go through consular processing.
Okay, great. So we just have like 7 more minutes. I think we have taken enough questions. So before we wrap up, Neeral and Holly, any recommendations or experts advice to the audience?
My sort of advice right now, especially as we're coming into the tail end of this program, which, the grandfathering provision ends September 30th, that if our job here is not to rush anyone into doing EB-5. We're not here to pressure anyone to EB-5 and saying that this is your only option. It's just that if you do have the financial means to do EB-5 and you want to stay inside the US, you want your kids to continue going to school, and you're unsure what's going to happen in your other EB-2 or EB-3 categories, then EB-5 is your best option. And you can only help yourself and help us by getting started early. September is going to come around very, very quickly. Right now, it can take up to 4 weeks or so to prepare a really strong EB-5 petition that takes into account the current adjudication trends and requirements from this administration. So you just want to give yourself ample time to prepare that. There are, of course, a lot of ways to strategize EB-5. You can do partial funding. You don't have to put up the $800,000 necessarily right away. But you just got to give yourself enough time, work with your attorney to strategize on the best way forward and get started soon.
Mm-hmm. Great. Holly, anything from your side?
in terms of source of
Sorry, I said Holly.
funds.
I said Haley.
Oh, yeah. Just in terms of source of funds, starting to think about where your funds may come from and gathering those documents. 7 years of bank statements from all of your accounts can be, burdensome to gather and organize, and having everything organized will make things, move quicker, um, across the board.
Yep, that's it. Like, so this is also advice I give to my investors. Like, spend one weekend, gather all the documents in a chronological order, whether you think it's going to be relevant or not. Don't think about that. Just gather everything. It's gonna help attorneys a lot.
And I guess just to wrap up, I just want to again reiterate that Hallie and Niril are at KLDP. I see people asking about your fees and stuff like that, so I figure that would just be a better if they just reach out to you directly. And also there are USCIS fees as well. And so that's just another thing that for people always say, oh, but you said it was just that much, and then I say, no, there are these fees and that fees. So, for their fee structure, et cetera, I highly recommend you reach out to them directly. If you'd like, we can always connect you. I'm Reema, REEMA at zeneb5.com. We'd love to talk to you about our projects. We do these quite often, and we try to have amazing attorneys and, just like Niril and KLDP, we always try to have one once a month with attorneys to answer questions, and then we do a few just on projects. So please do, join us again when we're talking about one of our projects next week. And I guess in parting, Hallie, do you have anything?
Nothing else to add.
Nothing else to
Yeah.
add, Niril?
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it. Look
Thank
forward to
you
the
so
next
Oh
one.
yeah,
Thank you so
thanks for
much.
coming. And you're always like your advice is very valuable to our investors and clients. I'm sure they really takes a lot of benefit from it.
Happy to help.
And yes, the recording will be shared. I will get it probably tomorrow at some point in the afternoon. And if you'd like a copy, you can please just let me know, and I'd be very happy to share it with you. And I think we should just put a full stop. Thank you all so much. And I'm so happy this time because I feel like finally I have some other New York people on here. It's always me in the West Coast. It's close to 9 p.m. here. We're still doing this for everybody. So thank you again for everybody
You'll be
so
jealous
much.
to know how beautiful weather it is over here.
It's too hot over there.
It's not a bad
Today
day
it's been
here.
nice.
Today was really nice. Yeah.
But it's not bad today here either. Thank you all so much and have a great evening. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.